So really, we go to work and we punch a clock and we turn in our time cards, and we get paid for that time that we're there. That money that we receive is really a trade-off for our time. Really, our time is our greatest commodity. It's our greatest treasure that we have. And this is interesting because Jesus says this in Matthew chapter 6. He says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, where thieves can break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where rust cannot destroy, where thieves cannot break up in and steal." But this is what he says. Listen, Matthew 6:21, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." See, our time really is our greatest commodity. And where we spend the bulk of our time is really a reflection on what we've treasured in our heart. And so the Lord can look down and he can open up your checking account book and your checking register and see where your money has been spent, to see where your heart is, because that's where your treasure is. But he can also look at your time card. And he can say, wow, I can really see what's important to you by where you're spending your time, but where a bulk of your time is being consumed. I wonder today, is a bulk of the time of the church, believers in Christ, is it really spent spending time in the presence of the Lord? Is it really spent investing in the work of his kingdom? Is it really spent doing those things that should be a reflection of the gratitude that we have for all that Jesus has done for us? Where our treasure is, there our heart will follow. I read a story of one of my favorite pastors, and he talked about how when he was younger, he had invested a little bit of money. He scrounged up what he could, and he invested a little bit of money in some Coca-Cola stock. And so during those days, the paper would be delivered first thing in the morning, and he'd get up first thing in the morning, and he'd run to the front door. He'd open up the front door. He'd open up the newspaper, and he'd see how the Coca-Cola stock had performed the day before. Right? We didn't have cell phones. We couldn't get real-time updates. So every morning he'd go and he'd open his door to see how his stock had done. One day he sold the stock, and he said this. He said, "I never went to the front door to check the newspaper for the price of Coca-Cola stock again." Why? Because his treasure wasn't there anymore. And it revealed to him that where his treasure was, his heart had followed. See, I wonder how many things like this pastor that we need to cut out of our lives, we need to get rid of. We need to get rid of things that are consuming our time, that are distracting us from the power and the presence of the Lord, that are leading us away from his presence rather than into his presence. Because the Lord is looking not for our treasure, the Lord is looking for our hearts. And he knows that where we've invested our time, our talents, and our resources in this world is an indicator, a reflection of what really has captivated our hearts. I wonder, has the Lord captivated your heart to such an extent that you're willing, that you're able, that you're ready to cut loose, to surrender, to give up, to lay down everything that would distract your heart from his presence? Maybe today the Lord is speaking to you, and there's something that as we've talked through this text in Matthew chapter 6 that God has revealed to you, and he's saying to you, you need to lay this down, you need to give this up, because your heart isn't really truly being held by me, but your heart is being held by that thing. Do you love the Lord enough today to surrender and to lay down whatever that is, so that the Lord would know that he has your heart?